Haas decided to fire Mick Schumacher at the end of the 2022 season and replace him with a 35-year-old veteran who hasn't had a full-time driving seat in 3 years, has severely harmed him. Still, the future looks bright for the younger, as he's been signed by Mercedes to be their reserve driver for the 2023 season. Although Audi's arrival in the sport is far away, the team that has been mostly related to Mick's return to the sport, Mercedes, could turn out to be a blessing in disguise for Mick. This is why he's opened up about being signed by Mercedes and what it means for him, taking a subtle shot at Steiner while doing so. Mick was the 2020 F2 champion, and it's safe to say that he is one of the rare drivers that receives the chance to drive in F1 immediately after winning the F2 championship. Unlike him, drivers like Vries and Piastri had to wait for some time, but unfortunately for Mick, his tenure at Haas didn't turn out exactly as he would have wanted it to. The 2 seasons that he spent with the team were a true roller coaster, especially the 2022 one, where he went from chasing the car and causing $1 million in damage repair to winning his first career point in Silverstone and Austin by finishing P8 and P6 respectively. However, 2021 wasn't a proper measurement when it came to Mick's talent, mostly because Haas decided to not develop this car and go with the 2020 version of it, just so they could save money for the 2022 season. When it became evident that the 2022 version could score points, Mick struggled a lot in the first couple of races, while Magnussen finished P5 in Bahrain and managed to pick up some points in Jeddah as well. However, with Mick crashing the car severely in Jeddah and Monaco, it became evident that the team is looking to replace him at the end of the season. This is why Steiner had turned into one of the most hated people on the grid, although he was perceived previously as one of the most lovable and interesting characters out there. But according to Ralf Schumacher, Steiner is a very self-centered person who doesn't want to be noticed when someone else is. Nevertheless, Schumacher's fate turned out as it did, and now he will struggle when it comes to finding a seat in Formula 1. But being sacked from Haas, a team that was perceived to be a very toxic environment for Mick, could be a blessing in disguise for the youngster. Now, he will have the chance to learn from one of the best to ever do it in this sport, Lewis Hamilton, the 7-time world champion, and that is something that should never be underestimated. Mick's father, Michael, had a lot of influence on Mercedes and the team's winning streak, mostly because he spent 3 seasons with the team from 2010 to 2012 and made sure that they were headed in the right direction. 2014 was when Mick visited Mercedes for the first time and was speaking about his future with the Brackley-based squad. Mick said that there had been immense growth in the team, something that he cannot wait to capitalize on further in his career. When talking about Mercedes and what he expects from the team in the future, Mick added, "My dad has been a part of this team from 2010 until 2012, and obviously it was a lot of the foundation of what it is today. I'm very proud of being a part of it now, and hopefully again, I'll be able to help them go forward and progress and contribute my knowledge to it." Changes that are obvious since 2014, which was the last time I came here, which was a kind of sneaky visit, and do my first simulator session at the time. To see the growth in the team is immense. It shows why the team is at the standard that it's at right now, so I'm very happy to be a part of it, very excited to see more of it, and get to know everybody. Obviously, Mercedes respects Schumacher a lot, and this was seen in Wolff's statement, adding that there will always be a place for a Schumacher in Mercedes, because the team shouldn't have been where it is now hadn't it been for Mick's father. Nonetheless, aside from Wolff's great wish, it's clear that Mercedes recognized Mick's talent and the fact that F2 championships aren't won by a lucky strike. Therefore, it's safe to say that the team will be more happy to invest in Mick and his future, and they do have one huge ace up their sleeve in the fact that Mick is the most experienced test driver in 2023. Mick is the only test driver aside from Ricciardo and Red Bull who has extensive knowledge of the new generation cars, having spent one full season with them since 2022. This is something that could help Mercedes a lot when it comes to the growth of the team, and if there is a driver that can give them proper feedback on what is happening with the car, that has to be Mick Schumacher. Mick also spoke about this matter, and when talking about his advantage, he added, "I guess it's not as common to have a reserve driver that has been driving the new era of cars." I know the new tires, I know what the car is about, what it needs also in terms of driving style. So, hopefully, I'll be able to contribute to that, but also see what the drivers need from the outside, and obviously simulator work is going to be very important. We have a lot to do, and hopefully I'll be able to contribute the knowledge that I have, but also gain a lot of knowledge for myself that I'll be able to use for the rest of my career and my life. So, what's the subtle shot that Mick has taken towards Steiner? When talking about young drivers in Formula One, Mick added that they do not receive enough time to build a character and a name for themselves in this sport, something that doesn't sit right with him. Obviously, he had 2 years to prove himself in Formula One, and although he ended the 2022 season with the same amount of points as Yuki Tsunoda, for example, the Japanese driver will receive at least one more chance to prove that he is made of F1 material. Unlike him, Mick would have satisfied himself with a reserve driver spot in a Mercedes, something that doesn't seem to be the right thing in the eyes of his uncle, Ralf Schumacher. On the other hand, Steiner, the main responsible guy for the outcome of Mick's fate, has replied to Mick, agreeing that young F1 drivers do not have enough time to prove themselves in the sport, but further adding that 2 years are more than enough to prove whether you have a future in this sport. When talking about this matter, Steiner added, "I think he's right. In racing, 2 years is a pretty good time, but there is nothing before he jumped straight from Formula 2 to Formula 1, because there is no testing." As you can see, we've not got 2 drivers with experience because young drivers cannot really take risks and we cannot evaluate them, like McLaren is doing with Piastri. But in the end, nobody knows how good he will be in an F1 car. He was very good in F3 and F2, but it is still a big step to perform. I wouldn't say it's a problem, but it is one of those things. How much do you want to risk? But that does mean it's a big step to perform. So obviously, I think it is a little bit of a, I wouldn't say a problem, is one of these things. How much risk you want to take with the car? What is the next for Schumacher now? Obviously, Audi's arrival is just too far away for Mick to wait, and even though he would be more than delighted to be perceived as a starting driver for the German team, he would have to find a solution for this in the next 3 years. Audi will arrive in the sport in 2026, and even with that, it's not a given that they would 100% invest in Schumacher, now that there will be drivers that will be more experienced and probably better than Mick on the market. Mercedes is the perfect team when it comes to securing a starting spot in Formula One, and although the Brackley-based team is secured for the next couple of years, teams like Williams could always use the talent of Mick. But now that they've signed Sargent and Albon, it's unclear whether Mick will be considered for Williams in the future. Therefore, the future is very uncertain for Mick, and although we would be more happy to see him in Formula One, time will tell whether he'll find himself as a full-time starting driver sometime in the future. What do you think about Mick's statement on Mercedes? Let us know in the comments below.